Dear students, welcome to the module on Criticism during Medieval Era. Early Middle Ages. Major thinker of this period was Neoplatonist Boethius, 480 to 524 AD. He translated the logical treatises of Aristotle and it influenced the thinkers of later Middle Ages, and it gave rise to a movement called scholasticism. The early Christian philosophers echoed Plato's objection to art. The early church harbored metaphysical idealism, descended in part from Plato, insisting that reality is spiritual. Plato's theory of forms justified their belief in the presence of a higher entity called God. Thinkers of the early Middle Ages were critical of the ideas propounded by Aristotle. Prominent thinkers of the era: Boethius, Saint Augustine, John of Salisbury, and Saint Thomas Aquinas. Saint Augustine, 354 to 430 AD. He synthesized classical and Christian notions. He was known for Confessions, which was written in AD 400, and On Christian Doctrine. He condemned liberal studies, suggesting that only the scriptures were truly liberating. Many centuries before Saussure, Augustine distinguished between natural and conventional science. A natural sign embodies no human intention, yet still leads to the knowledge of something else. Example: smoke signals fire and sunset signals dusk. Conventional signs, in contrast, are those which living beings mutually exchange for the purpose of showing the feelings of their minds. Example: words. The later Middle Ages, around 1050 AD, allegorical criticism and exegesis of both pagan and Christian texts enjoyed a similar continuity. Important movements of this period were classical grammatical tradition, the heritage of Neoplatonism, and scholasticism. Scholasticism was based on revived Aristotelianism. Sic et Non by Peter Abelard is an important work. Dominican scholars attempted to reconcile the Christian faith with Greek philosophy. There was a renewed interest in the work of Aristotle. Purely critical document of this period was Scholia Vindobonensia, a commentary on Ars Poetica. Dante's De Vulgari Eloquentia was also written during this period. John of Salisbury, 1115 to 1180 AD. Metallogicon was written in 1159 AD. It was the first medieval work that displayed a familiarity with and promoted the authority of the entire range of Aristotle's logical treatises. The explicit aim of Metallogicon is to defend logic against the attacks from a group of skeptics. John asserts, following Horace, that study and exercise are needed to cultivate and realize eloquence. He explained the broad function of grammar. He argued that study of grammar is not narrowly confined to one subject. Grammar prepares the mind to understand everything that can be taught in words. Hence, all other studies depend on grammar. Geoffrey de Vinsauf, 1200 AD. He was known for his treatise, Poetria Nova, or New Poetics. It was widely influential. It was designed to provide guidance in the rules and practice of poetry, along with the study and imitation of great poets. It became standard training manual of poets in Europe from the 13th century until well into Renaissance. He viewed poetry as a branch of rhetoric. He insisted that before putting pen to paper, the poet must construct the whole fabric of the poem within the mind's citadel. Ordinary speech and colloquial language are allowed only in comedy, which demands plain words only. Saint Thomas Aquinas, 1224 to 1274 AD. Aristotle assumes a prominent position in the thought of Saint Thomas Aquinas, the greatest of the scholastic philosophers. He was also called as the greatest philosopher of the Roman Catholic Church. He was known for Summa contra Gentiles. The essential purpose of this work was to defend or argue the truth of Christianity against Gentiles. Gentiles did not accept the authority of the scriptures. he engaged in a polemic against certain features of Averroism, the ideas of Spanish Islamic philosopher Ibn Rushd. Summa Theology was another important work written by St. Thomas Aquinas, and in this work we can find the argument of the unmoved mover. Aquinas held that poetry was infima doctrina. It was inferior kind of teaching to that of scripture. In our next module, we will see literary criticism from Renaissance to Enlightenment. Thank you.